Welcome back to Untamed Social, the podcast where we get real about what actually works in social media. Today we're talking about, in my opinion, probably one of the most frustrating problems for brands on social media, which is when you have high reach but low conversions. If your content is getting views, clicks, and engagement, but nobody's buying, booking, or subscribing, then this episode is for you. And I've got the perfect guest to break it all down, to help us kind of decode everything. I'm joined by Sidney Hardin, a powerhouse strategic growth marketer and product leader with over 8 years of experience turning engagement into revenue. Sidney's worked with both scrappy startups and Fortune 500s, aligning product, content, and media strategies to boost conversions at every stage of the funnel. Sidney, thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, thank you, Lainey. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I used to work closely with Strella a number of years ago, and back in the BYU days, and I, had a lot to learn from that experience, and I've used it throughout my career. So it's a pleasure to be back with you.
Yeah, it's really exciting. We love this when this happens. We tried our best to stay in touch. I know Rachel, our CEO, talks to you often, which is awesome. So we're excited. We knew that you were the one to be a part of this today. Rachel was like, immediately, I know the perfect guest. So today, what we're really going to be diving into is the difference between content that engages and content that converts, because there definitely is a difference. And we're also going to talk about what makes a call to action fall flat, how to know if your offer is the real issue, and some small changes that you can make today to start seeing results and kind of transitioning from that issue to making it a solution. So let's get into it. Sidney, okay, you're probably familiar with this, but we hear this a lot. When we get a client and they say, our reach is high, but our sales are low. And like social media isn't helping us to make sales or get calls or anything like that. What's the first thing that you would look at in that situation?
So I've gotten this quite a bit in my time, especially for brands that are focused on longer sales cycles, and if they're running a lot of awareness campaigns. My first instinct is to figure out if the attention they're getting is actually the right attention. So like high reach, you're seeing the high view volume, it's gaining virality. It may feel like exciting and you think it's getting a lot of traction, but if it's not translating, you have to ask yourself, who is actually engaging? Are they in the market in the first place? Like where in this, sales cycles are they? And what are they doing after you see you? So there's a couple of metrics I try to look at. I think attribution and the funnel metrics are the most important place to start. Because a lot of brands will only look at what they're seeing directly in the social media platforms. So they're looking at the last touch. So they're giving full credit to the final click, whether that's a Google ad, a direct landing page visit, or like a separate social ad. They're going to assume that's the channel that works. That's where we need to, allocate our budget. But the thing is, social is often the first touch in this funnel. It drives the overall halo effect. Because if someone sees your funny or engaging post, a post intended to educate, they ultimately will remember your brand from that, and they may convert later down the line when they're hit with an email or see you, I don't know, through like an event, for instance. So you really you need to hone in on your multi-touch attribution, because then you'll see how social helps kind of build and cultivate that funnel.
Yeah, I think that's a misconception of a lot of brands too, right? Like they think, okay, if I'm consistently posting on social media, I've got good content, and it's going to immediately lead to a sale. And they forget that building that trust factor, that there are those multiple touch points and things that you need to get them off of the social media platform and have those other ways of communicating with them to keep them, or to keep you top of mind. So I love that. I think that's really important and definitely something that brands miss a lot. And they think social media is the answer. That happens more often than we'd like.
Exactly.
Definitely.
They need that full funnel follow through, and preferably like a nurturing sales process in mind. I think one of the things social can help with throughout that deeper funnel engagement is really helping you assess if the traffic is qualified in the first place. So if you're getting a ton of views, maybe like a percentage of them click through, and you're noticing they're not aligning with your target user profile, that's a good sign to take a step back and really think about, who am I going after? This message is speaking to the wrong people. Like, where can we shift?
Yeah. And this is not something that you and I like kind of prepped on before. So hopefully I'm not like throwing a wrench into things for you. But, you know, one thing, last week I had a podcast with a business strategist, and him and I were talking about how for social media, for him and also for Strella, something that we see a lot is that on social media, we're actually not getting the right audience. So like for us, we give a lot of valuable insight with our content, and so does he, but he's getting a lot of marketers who are following him, who aren't his, ideal client. It's not his target audience. And same for us. We're getting other social media marketers or managers who are following us, and that's the majority of our audience. What kind of advice would you give for a situation like that, where you're getting peer-to-peer kind of engagement, but not your target audience?
I think it has to do with the mapping the funnel to your content. So where you start focusing on the mid funnel is really where you introduce the value proposition. And that value proposition is going to look very different for marketers who are trying to win clients versus clients with more niche strategic business issues that they're trying to solve for. So really like ensuring that that content's aligned to that core person need. And I think really a lot of people kind of fail to dive into that level of detail, but it's absolutely critical for honing your messaging. And from there, you will collect signals on your site or collect signals through other channels that will enable you to retarget strategically. So if you are noticing more of those users who align with your target audience, keep hitting them with those repeat ads, like keep pushing them within a short period of time down that funnel, take advantage of that recency. And then over time, you will gain additional content insights that will further inform the value prop, and it'll just become a self-serving cycle. So that's kind of where I would start, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice for us when we looping back to this episode. But I have a feeling like that this is a common problem for a lot of people. I like how you frame that with it being the mid funnel.
I mean, I'm encountering it too from a product standpoint, because I have to think about, is the product we're building really what our users need, or is it what our clients think the users need? So if we're encountering a situation of leaky bucket where we're having a huge influx of users, but they're not necessarily, we're not retaining them, really we just have to step back and try to put ourselves in the user's shoes.
Definitely. Yeah, and that's something, it keeps becoming a topic on every episode, I feel like. So maybe this is good for our listeners, is kind of shifting that mindset of, just being a producer of content and actually start consuming content and really consider who your audience is and what it is that they're looking for. It's really easy if you're part of a marketing team or if you're a social media manager and you're fully in the brand, really easy to get stuck in that producer kind of vibe, and you miss out on looking at it from a consumer perspective. So that's funny because I feel like every episode this comes up.
Yeah, I think I honestly think it's the biggest challenge, because it requires stepping outside of yourself, stepping outside whoever your paying client is, and really getting into the psyche of the user. And it's easier said than done. I think everyone struggles with it.
Yeah, I think so too. So, okay, talking about what some of the problems could be, how much do you feel like the offer itself plays into conversions? Does it play a role, and how can a brand determine if their offer is the actual issue?
Yeah, so I think it's often the hidden bottleneck. If they're clicking through firstly and they're not completing the action, that means your landing page experience and the value prop itself isn't compelling enough. So you try to test this using a couple of different lenses. So firstly, we look at clarity. Do people immediately understand what they get? And usually you have to communicate this within that initial touch point on a page. So from a product standpoint, we try to prioritize placement within the viewport. As soon as they touch that page, do they see it? Social, first 3 seconds of an ad. Then you need to communicate urgency, because people aren't going to be motivated to jump on it unless there's, a time critical element or it's literally impacting their bottom line. So that could be like a financial savings or incentive. It could be this is a limited time offer, like exclusivity, kind of appeal to those values that promote urgency.
Yes.
And then relevance is also important. Like, sure, you can promise this, but how does it relate to the expectations set by your content? Like, it has, again, that goes back to the user persona and understanding what engages them, what are their interests, and tying that into, like, the problem you're solving for.
Definitely. So you just gave like a 3-step formula right there. So we got clarity, urgency, and relevance. I feel like you really nailed that on the head and simplified it, because sometimes I feel like it's easy to complicate things. And I think that first step of clarity is really important. And where people really mess up is because it's too confusing. Like, how are you ever going to convert somebody if they have no idea what they're even getting into with that first touch point, like you stated? So I love that. That's a tip to take away today, listeners, is it's that 3-step of clarity, urgency, and relevance. So I love that. Yeah, I think that's something that, brands really need to consider when they're looking at their offer. And a lot of times, like you said, like, they just miss it. They think, okay, like, I've got it, right? My offer is great. That's not the problem. Yeah. It's my content. And it's like, no, it's a mix.
It's a little bit of ego at the end of the day as well. Because you're like, I think I know what they want. Like, how could they not want this? Well,
yes.
That's not always the case, and
yes,
every single day, and it's a constant balancing act. So no, I don't think.
Yeah, I can imagine. Definitely. Okay, so considering offers being an issue, one thing that I will admit all day long is that a call to action is always a struggle for me. In your opinion, okay, I understand definitely the clarity, the urgency, the relevance, all of that. But when I'm creating a social media post, sometimes, I feel like not just myself, but a lot of brands, marketing strategists, it's hard for them to grasp the understanding of what an effective call to action would be. Where do you see brands really going wrong with them? And like, what would you say is the solution?
Yeah, I mean, I've honestly encountered this recently where we were trying to design a customer journey funnel using omni-channel approach, so across Facebook, LinkedIn, and Reddit. But designing the call to action to different stages of the funnel it's kind of challenging, because if the first time they're interacting with your brand is sign up, buy now, that's going to turn off a lot of users because they haven't warmed up to your brand. They're not familiar with, how the content's relevant to their business and their core needs. So you kind of need to design your call to actions like based on the funnel. So for awareness, for instance, you want to spark curiosity, try a softer approach, like see how it worked for this individual, how it changed their life. That's where you kind of lead with your values, and I want to say like you appeal to the human aspects. The consideration stage, where you're mid-funnel, that's kind of where you start to request a little more for your audience, right? But you still want to offer them something in return. So get your free quote, for instance, or submit the form to learn more. So where you're requiring a little bit more of an action, but you present it early on in the process after you've primed them to be ready to take that next step. And then the decision stage, right? That's where you're ready to sign up, make the purchase, book now. And that's where those 3 aspects I talked about earlier will come into play.
Yeah. So I think it is important, something that, like, when we have consulting clients and we get to this portion of things and we're talking about, a lot of different things, but calls to action being one of them. I think a lot of people fail to realize that there are different stages that a potential client could be in. So I love that you brought that up. And so I agree with you. We always have the awareness, the interest, the consideration. I think we use 4 for whenever I teach the consulting. But I think that it's important for brands to understand that you have to consider where your audience is. So speaking of that, with like the different stages, if you're like creating a content plan, you know, obviously you're going to have that audience that is already introduced to you, right? They're already past the awareness stage, but then you've got those that you're trying to reach to have them get to know you. What would you say would be like the percentage of content that you would kind of split up? So like, would it be 50% being awareness content, 20% being consideration? Like, how would you split that?
I'm hesitating because it depends so heavily on the type of business, like I said, the life cycle of a customer as well. So for instance, if you're in B2B, those tend to be higher ticket items, and it can take more of a warm-up period to establish that trust, establish that relevancy. So I typically, I don't know if I can break it down into percentage, but I would definitely allocate more of my funds towards that awareness phase where you're attempting to educate, show your subject matter expertise, or entertain in a way that you become memorable. Because from that point on, you can retarget based on the most qualified leads, because you don't want to be wasting your money on users who may just view your content, not necessarily want to take that further action. So that's where retargeting really comes into play. It tends to be a little bit more expensive to run, but you're going after a more targeted audience, so you get a lot more bang for your buck there. And then at that point, a lot of like the conversions may take place off of social as well. That's another consideration for B2B. So really making sure you have that social, those social drivers tied into your CRM or your CDP to promote those in-funnel actions. For B2C, though, that's another story, right? Because you want people who are primed, they understand the lifestyle you're selling, they understand, you know, the values that you're promoting, but you want to drive that action quicker. So in that case, I would spend a lot more on those direct conversion ads, like upwards of, you know, 60, 70%, and only use like the 30% or so for social proof and drive that, you know, initial trust. So that's honestly the split, and that's how I would think about it. Everyone is different, but working across different industries and different life cycles, there's no one size fits all.
Yeah. And well, I think that's great advice too, because it's really easy to get trapped, especially if you're in the service industry, like you said, with it being those higher ticket items. Then it's easy to look at product-based businesses or even other service-based businesses that maybe aren't, you know, so much of a boutique price or, you know, something like that. It's easy to see that their conversions are going to be a lot higher than someone like you. You have to work a lot harder, in my opinion, if you have a high ticket item or product or service, that you've got to work harder when it comes to promoting. And it's not even promotional content. It's literally just letting them get to know you. Like you said, giving that memorable content that keeps you top of mind, but also showing your value and your expertise. So I think that's great advice, especially for those who are in those higher priced services. It's not going to be the same. It's definitely not going to be the same.
No, and like you'll encounter this too with some clients who are trying to sell like a expensive SaaS product to small business owners, for instance, and they're like, why won't they just buy it? Like, I'm sending them the product white papers, like, this is how the product works, like, can they not see this is a tool that will make their workflows better? Like, no, there's more of a lead up time there, and that's where like the social and the top of funnel investment will really come in handy in the long run. So brands have to be prepared for that.
Yes, they do. Okay, so then to end this, what's one small change, or not a change, but a change, I guess, that a brand could make today that could possibly increase their chances of converting an audience that's already engaging? So like they've got the reach, they're getting decent engagement. What's the one thing that you would give them advice on today as a small win?
That's a tricky one. So I would hone in on where that like I mentioned at the beginning, where that last touch was. And if they're seeing a higher percentage of those coming from, let's say, Facebook as opposed to Instagram, that's where I would hone in on the retargeting, because you want to go where the people are and where they're actually showing traction. I've been working recently, like with this pre-seed startup, just consulting on the side, and they had preconceptions that we need a launch on Instagram, we need a launch on Facebook. That's where we're seeing traction and low conversion rates. Low conversion costs. And I was kind of hesitant about it at first, and I said, well, have you considered Reddit? Like, your customer base is on Reddit, but we're not running anything to them right now. And they're like, well, that doesn't make sense. We're trying to sell a lifestyle. We're trying to sell something very visual. I'm like, well, what do your customers actually want? So I started posting organically on Reddit, just in comment threads, like, hey, check out this app. This will solve like your dating woes, for instance. And we have gained a couple hundred users within a day or so, which it's a high margin for us, just from going after those organic strategies. And from there, we're able to see the last touch was Reddit. Let's invest more into Reddit retargeting. So that's kind of how I would go about like those quick wins, is kind of look at your last touch. But you also have to kind of play the field to figure out where that last touch is.
Yeah, it's a balancing act too. I mean, that's something that we're really big on, is understanding like what platforms should you be on, and people oftentimes think, okay, well, I like to consume content on Instagram or TikTok or Pinterest, whatever it is. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's where your audience is. So I love that. I think that is perfect advice. So if that's you, I would really reevaluate kind of where your audience is and consider other platforms that maybe may give you better value for the type of audience that you're looking for, so that you can actually take that retargeting and all of that initiative and turn them into a conversion, whether that is booking a call, buying a product, whatever it is that is a conversion for you. So I love that. Sidney, thank you so much. You were an absolute gem, and you have so much knowledge. Where can people connect with you to learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pleasure, Lainey. So nice to reconnect. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I am more than happy to talk through, some strategies, take a quick look at your customer journey funnel from both like a product and marketing lens, try to see if there's any gaps we can fill. And, this is a passion of mine. Even though I'm in the tech space now, I still work really closely with marketers in the day-to-day, because I can't keep my hands out of it. So, yeah.
That's good. You love what you do.
Exactly.
Awesome. And if you're enjoying Untamed Social, make sure to follow, leave a review, share it with a friend or a teammate who needs to hear it. Until next time, go create content that doesn't just look good, but actually works. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, if you enjoyed today's episode and you learned a lot, imagine what you and your team could do with a fully customized strategy day. Our consulting boot camps are tailored to meet your biggest needs, whether that's boosting engagement, building content plans, or coming up with a brand new strategy. If you want to learn more, just hit the link below in the show notes.